Hey guys, what's up? It's Karasmai here. Finally, we have what you've all been waiting for, the ultimate Kane guide. Now, this is what you guys have been requesting since day one, so let's get right into it. Now, you're probably wondering why you should play Kane. Well, I'll personally tell you why I play Kane. It has been the most rewarding solo carry champion that I've played in the jungle so far. It takes a bit of time and effort to learn properly, but once you do, I promise you'll see how hard he can carry, and you'll be very satisfied. Now, let's get into his abilities. First of all, you have his passive named the Darkened Scythe, which changes depending on which form you get, but his base passive is simply achieving form. Like if you hit melees, you'll get Rost, and if you hit range, you'll get Shadow Assassin. His base Q is called Reaping Slash, which is pretty simple. It procs damage 2 times initially and at the end. His W is called Blade's Reach. It deals damage in a line that significantly slows all enemies hit. Your E is gaining a boost of movement speed, which will allow you to walk through walls. Upon entering the walls, it heals you and extends the duration. If you're in combat, it doesn't extend the duration though. Your ultimate allows you to enter the body of the champion you recently damaged for a short amount of time. Upon exiting, you will do a burst of damage, and you can choose which way to exit. Which also, by the way, you can smite for damage. Like, if you want to smite somebody and ult them, you could. For us, it's passive. You heal for a % number of spell damage done to champions. Your Q, which upon leveling doesn't scale in damage, remains the same and does % health damage for the dash and strike. Your W is similar, but instead of a slow, it is now a knockup, and upon leveling up, lowers the CD time and ups the damage. Your E is unchanged. Your ultimate is the same, but now heals and damages for % health of the champion you have ulted. Now for Blue Kayn, you have your passive, which for the first 3 seconds of combat, you deal a scaling number, you do a scaling % number of bonus magic damage, which will be reset upon exiting your ultimate, so it can proc 2 times in a fight. Your Q remains the same but scales in damage. Your W is still a slow, but now it casts a living shadow, which means you may move and use other abilities or auto attack as you cast it, as opposed to other Kayn forms, which you would have to wait for the cast timer. Your E is the same, but now you gain additional movement speed, and you are immune to slows when activating Shadow Step. Your R, as I mentioned, resets your passive, and now you may cast it from further away. Now for runes, it's pretty simple. There's 3 pages, one for Rost, one for Shadow Assassin, and one if you want to go either or. So, for Rost, you run Conquer, which is really good as you scale in late game team fights. And then you get Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, and secondary you want to run Sudden Impact and Ravenous Hunter. Ravenous Hunter is huge for healing in team fights. And your mini stats, you're going to go 10% attack speed, which synergizes well with getting your Conquer off. And then you get 10 adaptive damage, and then 5 armor. Shadow Assassin runes is Electrocute for the burst, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter to be more mobile and snowbally. For your secondary, Absolute Focus and Water Walking, which will help you move across the map quicker and deal more damage upon entering the fights. Your mini stats are 2 times adaptive damage and then scaling HP. Your third rune page is a mixture of both. You run Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collector, Ravenous Hunter, and secondary you want to run Triumph and Tenacity with mini stats as double adaptive damage and plus 5 armor. You mostly want to run these runes when either form can work for that game. Now, your starting item for Kayn, if you're going to be jungling, it's Talisman. I've tested Machete, and Talisman is not only quicker, but much more healthy. For playing Kayn in the jungle, you're going to be taking Flash and Smite. I've tried Ignite, it's funny, but doesn't actually work. Now for skill order, I do something very unique that I created. So initially, you want to put 3 in your Q, and then start maxing your W all the way to 5. Then you can finish maxing your Q, or you can max your E, depending on the matchup. The reason I do this is because for your first form, your most important ability for fights and clearing is your Q, but once you evolve for both forms, your W is your most important ability. For Ross, your Q doesn't even gain anything besides a bit of lower CD on being maxed. The item build for Ross usually goes Blue Smite against champions that can kite out, or Red Smite against champions who will be in melee range for combat. Then you upgrade to Warrior and you get defensive boots. Most of the time you get Ninja Tabbies unless they have a lot of AP because you already have Tenacity in your runes. Then The most important item for Ross is Black Cleaver. After that, if you're snowballing early, you can go Death Stance. If you're a bit behind and they lack AP damage, you may go Randuin's or Sterix Gauge. If they have 1 to 3 AP threats, then you want to go Spirit Visage after Black Cleaver. Usually because it helps with all your healing and it gets you to the 40% CDR cap at only 4 items. Then after that, if they have a lot of healing, I love to go Executioners into a GA, and then finish Executioners to a Mortal Reminder for my final item, so I could deal maximum damage. If they don't have healing, then I would either go Sterix or Randuin's, then GA. For Shadow Assassin, I almost always go the same build, but with a bit of a twist. See, I start off with Blue Smite always, because sometimes you could just smite someone and ult them and you'll 100 to 0 them, and then I will finish that into a Warrior, and then if my team is very AD heavy, I will go Sork Boots because of the passive, and the ability to proc it 2 times in the fight after resetting it with your R is insanely strong. But if my team is AD and AP mixed, then I'll usually go Moby Boots because it's easier to, it's much better to snowball the map if you're quicker and more capable of being in fights. After that, I always go Duskblade into Edge of Night. I usually go Edge of Night because it's very good for entering fights without and being able to go untouched. Then after that, I either go Lord Dominic's and GA, whichever one I need first. So let's say they have a lot of tanks, then I'll go Lord Dominic's into GA, or let's say they're very squishy and I don't want to die, then I'll just go GA and to Lord Dominic's. Now for my pathing's pretty simple. I have 2 main paths that I tend to go every game because of how consistently well it works. First of all, we have Red, Krugs, Raptors, opposite side Scuttle. So usually you want vision on the Scuttles early on to know where the enemy Jung is. So let's say if he shows at the opposite side Scuttle, you could take your side Scuttle and then do his entire bot or top side, depending on which area you start. Or, you know, if he doesn't go to the opposite side Scuttle, then you do that, and you can either look for a gank after, and if not, then you could just farm your blue, Gromp, and Wolves. Now my second pathing is Red, Raptors, Scuttle, gank mid, opposite side Scuttle. Now this pathing is really good against weak early game junglers who cannot take an early Scuttle because of their pathing, such as Kha'Zix, Vi, or Zac. And ganking mid usually works out, and if not, you can just walk through mid, the opposite side Scuttle, and then look for another gank, top or bot, depending which side of the map you're on. Or clear your blue Gromp Wolves. Now for advanced mechanics, Kayn doesn't have too many, but there are little things you could do, such as activating both cycles of your Q, simply by standing on a wall and just pressing your Q into it, then you will get both cycles of the damage. You can also smite somebody and ult them. It's a very, very strong tactic, especially for blue Kayn. Now, for Ross and blue Kayn, their combos, a lot of people ask me, how do I get my combos off? Well, with blue Kayn, I usually like to use my W to initiate. After coming from a wall, I use my W to initiate, then I'll walk forward, auto them to get my Duskblade proc, look to Q, and then R, and if they're not dead, as I'm in my R, I'll wait for my R until my QCD time is down, and I'll get another Q off because of the passive damage. Now for Ross, you want to hitting your W is very crucial, so most of the time I'll have Chill Smite just to slow them down, so I'll Chill Smite them initially, and then I'll throw my W to make sure they get hit by it, because the cast time's a bit long, and then I will simply go up to them, auto attack them, and Q them. And you always want to hold on to your R, so with Conquer and attack speed you'll be autoing a lot with Rost. So you kind of want to use your R like a Tryndamere. You want to use it very low HP, and remember, you cannot die on your R unless you're ignited or you have a damage over time on you. Now a lot of people wonder when you should go red or blue. It's very simple, I think. If they have multiple squishies and little to no peel, then blue Kayn is very, very good and can solo carry easily. If they have a lot of bruisers / tanks, then Ross is very good for taking fights against those champions. I usually tend to almost always go blue when I see a double range bot lane, and a range mid laner, such as Zyra Ashe bot and a Syndra mid. Ross is usually better for most comps though, because of how the meta currently stands. Now I want to get into exactly how you're supposed to play Kayn throughout the game. For your first form, there isn't much changes on what you do depending on which form you go, besides maybe looking to take fights against the proper orbs you're trying to achieve, you know, melees for Ross, range for blue. The main strength of Kayn comes into his mid-late game team fights, so your pathing early on is going to be very crucial. Luckily, Kayn has a very good kit for clearing camps and being on the map faster than just about any other jungler. Also, you're gonna want to have your form by at least 15 minutes. Otherwise, you might fall too behind, so don't get caught up too much in farming. Mid game, you want to play off your power spikes and hitting big combos in team fights. Usually Kayn is an objective controlled jungler, so giving up an early drag or rift isn't the end of the road. Just make sure once you get your form, you're ready to fight for any future objective. Mid game is usually where Kayn is his strongest for both forms. He can close out a game solo if you know what you're doing. Blue, usually you tend to look for picks and then take objectives, tower and baron, after said picks. Ross is extremely strong in team fighting and carrying his team in that aspect, which is a team you can go on towards an objective after winning a huge fight. Late game is a very devastating place to be for Blue Kayn. A lot of assassins naturally fall off late game, so if you get at that point, just try your very hardest to sneak a pick on their backline. Hopefully your team can do the rest. For Ross, late game isn't exactly the best place either, because it gets a lot easier to avoid his W and kill him before he can get his R off. But if you hit a huge knockup in a team fight, your team can almost always follow with the damage to close out the game. Now, one of the last things we're going to go over is how exactly to play in tough matchups. I personally think Kayn has a lot of good/strong matchups that go very underlooked because people try to outplay too much in the early game. A lot of your first form is giving up scuttles, objectives, or maybe even priority, but having the mindset that you will outscale and carry once you get your form. Now, the absolute worst matchups for Kayn stems from obvious things that counter Kayn, such as high mobility and good peel. Now, the 4 champions I recommend not playing Kayn into at this point in time is Graves, Kindred, Nidalee, Kha'Zix. I know ways to beat each matchup, but it surely isn't easy, and it most of the time shouldn't even work. Now, you're probably wondering, how does each champion counter Kayn? Well, Kayn excels at being able to land his W and outpath most junglers. All of these junglers are easily capable of outpathing, having the tools to dodge his W. Graves has his E, Kindred Q, Kha'Zix R, Nidalee W. They could be more impactful in fights because Nidalee has good peel, Kindred has her R, Kha'Zix has a lot of damage and is too fast to lock down with your W, and Graves has a smoke screen when you try to enter the fight. The main way I found to beating almost all of these matchups is actually through Blue Kayn, because of how fast you can kill somebody if they don't pay enough respect, which most people don't give Blue Kayn any respect. Either way, guys, that's going to be the end of the video. It's been a long wait, and I really appreciate all the support you guys have shown me. It's been amazing. I hope that we can all use this champion to climb for Season 9. That is all, everybody. Thank you for watching.